Hello, everybody. It's George from Ireland, so welcome back to my channel. Anyway, I'm talking about the coup d'etat in Gabon the other day. In case you don't know, it's a francophone country in West Africa on the Atlantic seaboard, and so it's a rather small country. It's got about 2 million people, but it's almost floating on oil, and so it should be one of Africa's richest. But instead, the president's family are one of Africa's richest, and most people live in penury. Now, the poverty is not as severe as in much of Africa. They say that the regime and its cronies have allowed just enough wealth to trickle down to the masses to prevent revolution. Well, until now. So President Ali Bongo has been the head of state since his father died in 2009. His father was Omar El Haj Bongo, who'd held power since 1964, just 4 years after independence from France. And yeah, so that's it. The same family held power for 59 years, and there was a military coup. And usually it is the military that overthrows a president in these situations. They've got the guns, and they stop obeying the commander in chief. Well, that's it. What can he do? Now, they've been more humane. He's under house arrest. He's not been killed. He's not been imprisoned. He's not been charged with anything so far. He's managed to make this video asking people to make some noise. I mean, if things continue, well, the new military junta is going to carry on holding power. It's only if there are huge demonstrations in Gabon and concerted effort from outside the country that President Bongo can be restored to office. But it doesn't look likely because he's not a darling of democracy. So he's not really a poster boy for equity in Africa. And that's why there's been literally dancing in the streets in Gabon, and there seems to be much public rejoicing. Now, that's a straw poll. That's not scientific data at all. That might be completely unrepresentative. The image has been showed. That might be a distorting reality. So that perception of it, yeah, could be skewed. So got to treat that with some skepticism. Anyway, so the military officers appeared on television saying that they are going to that they have assumed power because there was an election just last week in which President Ali Bongo was declared winner again, but the opposition said that the fraudulence of the election was flagrant. Now, one of Mr. Bongo's sons has been tried with treason. So it's the head of the Presidential Guard, General Brice Oligui Nguema, who is now presiding head of state, or what shall I say, temporary head of state. And it's usually these Praetorians of all the military units that overthrow the president. And so he's controlling Libreville, and so far as I know, the rest of the country. Libreville being the capital. Freetown, it means literally. I was just pointing out to my pupils the other day that Libreville has exactly the same signification as Freetown in Sierra Leone. And for much the same reason that these French anti-slavery patrols in the Atlantic in the 19th century, freeing people who otherwise are going to be carried into servitude in the American continent and returning them to Africa. Anyway, so that's it. And the provisional government is sufficiently confident that they've eased this curfew that they'd initially introduced. So yeah, that's it. It's mostly a forested country. It joined the Commonwealth just last year, despite it never having been a Britannic colony and French being its official language. And you might say, well, doesn't that stain the Commonwealth, which is supposedly all about democracy, the so-called Harare principles, ha, 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 signed in the early 90s, despite the fact that Mugabe was well on the way into turning Zimbabwe into a dictatorship and committed genocide against the Matabele in the early 1980s. But people had to look the other way because, oh, well, reconciliation, live and let live, or whatever. Forget, people weren't going to let a small matter like the mass murder of several thousand Matabele civilians, nor Ndebele protocol and that, to get into the way of this myth making about the Commonwealth. Anyway, he speaks faultless English, despite, I mean, as a French-speaking country, as I said, and he went to the Sorbonne in Paris, where he studied law and actually qualified as a lawyer. He's married twice. Both his wives are white, as I understand it, a white French woman or a white American later on. So significant he didn't bother saying it in French, that was actually his mother tongue. I think he speaks one of the indigenous Gabonese languages as well, Lingala, if I got that right. So will there be a greater redistribution of wealth amongst those who are penurious? Well, possibly. Okay, but there haven't been any protests as far as I can see, and no world leader saying, "Oh well, he must be restored to office," because there's a major question mark over his legitimacy. International observers said there've been major irregularities in all the elections that have been held when he's been continually returned to office. So that's why I don't see him being restored, because there's obviously the example of recent coups d'états like Mali and Niger in recent months, and the African Union has been ineffective there, despite the fact that the people ousted did have democratic credentials, where Mr. Bongo really doesn't. Plus, he's almost incapacitated. He's not fully in control of his bodily motor functions because he suffered a stroke in 2018 and has never fully recovered. But apparently, he's mentally unimpaired. It doesn't seem to be obtunded at all the way I saw him speaking. So there was an attempt to overthrow him in 2019 that was not crowned with success. So there will be little sympathy for him. Um, so Omar Bongo, his father, was a fascinating character, born in 1935, and he was a very short man, about 5'1", where his son Ali Bongo is also well below average height, but not quite that short. They say that his father, Omar Bongo, outlawed the word pygmy because he felt it was a slur on him, although he actually wasn't a pygmy. To be considerably shorter to be a pygmy, which is an autochthonous African group, and they are extremely short. But anyway, coming back to the father, Omar Bongo, and he'd been in the French military, in the army, the air force, served in various French colonies in Equatorial Africa, and then got involved in politics and independence and overthrown Léon Mba, who was the first president of the country, and assumed office himself. He converted to Islam in 1973 in a village to visit to Libya, and that's when he became Omar Bongo, having previously been Bernard. And I think he went on a Hajj to Mecca, Omar al-Hajj Bongo, and his son followed suit. So I think few tears will be shed for the Bongo dynasty. And people were supposedly using racialist slurs, saying Bongo Bongo land, like the late lamented Alan Clark, Conservative MP, who said that in a meeting with civil servants, who was probably leaked to the press. People said that was racialist. But word leaked back to Gabon, where the then President Bongo heard about this, and he sent Alan Clark an electron placard saying "Gagner avec Bongo," as in "win with Bongo," which was prominently displayed at Alan Clark's electoral meetings. And then, who was it? Godfrey Bloom, that United Kingdom Independence Party member of the European Parliament, maybe 10 years ago, talking about Bongo Bongo land, and people say how repulsively racialist. But there really is a country in Africa where the president's surname is Bongo. But I suppose it was meant to be demeaning when people were coming up with that. Yeah, so I don't think this is going to be great deal of change there. All the provisional government needs to do say, well, we're holding elections, and they can't be any worse than what's been held up until now. It might actually get better. It might get worse. I just don't know. So I suppose nobody particularly wants to rock the boat because they want access to oil from there, especially as world oil supplies are jeopardized owing to Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. All right. Thank you so much for watching my channel. Please subscribe on Patreon, donate to PayPal, georgecallahan79 at gmail.com. Bye.